Guilty of genocide, former Bosnian Serb leader Radovan Karadzic is jailed for 40 years.
Guilty of the following counts. Count 2, genocide.
He was convicted of orchestrating ethnic cleansing during the Bosnian War in the 1990s, including the massacre of thousands of Muslim men and boys in Srebrenica.
Also tonight, Belgium's security blunders. Now 2 ministers offer to resign.
Premier League footballer Adam Johnson is jailed for 6 years for sexual activity with a 15-year-old girl.
And tributes to the Dutch master, Johan Cruyff, has died, aged 68.
This is the ITV Evening News with Mary Nightingale and Mark Austin.
Good evening. It's taken more than 2 decades, but tonight the man responsible for Europe's worst massacres since the Second World War is facing the rest of his life in jail. The former Bosnian Serb leader Radovan Karadzic has been found guilty of genocide and crimes against humanity.
He's been convicted by UN judges of overseeing the worst atrocities of the Bosnian War, including the deaths of thousands of Muslim men and boys in Srebrenica. He was sentenced to 40 years in prison. Our Europe editor James Mates reports from The Hague.
The International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia is now in session.
The wheels of international justice may turn painfully slowly, but they do still turn, and at least some of those leaders who commit crimes against humanity one day pay a price. It's 24 years since this man, Radovan Karadzic, embarked on a brutal war in Bosnia. He was the leader of the Bosnian Serbs who ordered the siege of Sarajevo. 21 years ago, men under his command murdered 8,000 Muslim men and boys at Srebrenica, the worst act of genocide since World War II.
Mr. Karadzic, could you please stand?
Today he was cleared of one charge of genocide, but that did nothing to mitigate the list of crimes he was convicted of.
Count 2, genocide. Count 3, persecution, a crime against humanity. Count 4, extermination, a crime against humanity. Count 5, murder, a crime against humanity.
The sentence for these and 6 more counts means this 65-year-old should die in jail.
To a single sentence of 40 years of imprisonment.
Survivors, relatives and victims of Karadzic filed out of the courtroom having watched the verdicts, among them a man who'd been imprisoned in one of the camps first revealed to the world by ITV News back in 1992. He was happy, but the acquittal on one of the 2 charges of genocide hurt badly.
But the 11th one was about genocide in Prijedor, where I come from, and other municipalities back in '92, in the time when actually the whole process of genocide started and ended with Srebrenica.
Karadzic's lawyer emerged to say his client continued to maintain his innocence and would appeal. How could he claim that what happened at Srebrenica was not genocide?
He claims he didn't know that prisoners were being or had been executed after the fall of Srebrenica.
Appeals and more hearings can only drag out the agony for those who lost sons, brothers, fathers at Srebrenica. Though concern for the victims has never been a priority for Karadzic or those who worked with him. 10 guilty verdicts out of 11, but that one acquittal has been deeply disappointing to these survivors. They wanted the court to recognise that the whole Bosnian War was a war of ethnic cleansing and genocide. James Mates, ITV News, The Hague.
Well, almost a generation on, it's still not at all clear that the wounds caused by Karadzic's appalling crimes have even begun to heal. In the Bosnian capital Sarajevo and, of course, in Srebrenica itself, understanding and forgiveness are in short supply. Our senior international correspondent John Irvine has spoken to some of those who lived through the darkest of days.
Looks can be deceptive. Sitting in a tranquil valley, this sleepy place is, in fact, the darkest corner of the Bosnian War. It's Srebrenica. On the edge of town, an expansive cemetery stands testament to the genocide that occurred here. It took just 3 days for the Serbs to corral and then massacre more than 8,000 men and boys. The Serbs, operating under the leadership of Radovan Karadzic, sought to erase the identities of their victims permanently. Their cold calculation was that they could never be held accountable for the mass murder of the missing or the unknown. But they were wrong. An ongoing dig for human remains plus DNA matching means most victims have been identified and brought here. Among them this father and son, Hamid and Fejzo Efendic. A widow and a mother who lost her boy, Fadila knows exactly where their names are etched in stone, 2 among thousands, on a memorial that's proof to the world and those in denial. Fadila told me Karadzic's conviction would only count if future generations learned from it. Nura Vezovic is another Srebrenica widow who was all nerves as she watched what she's waited so long for, the reckoning. Then the judge handed down 40 years. That means he's going to die in jail, she said, emphatically. Radovan Karadzic lived here in Sarajevo for 30 years until 1992. This was his apartment block. When he left, he didn't just turn his back on the city, he turned his guns on it as well. Hundreds of shells were fired in every day, the hills all round, providing the perfect vantage points from which to rain down terror. General Jovan Divjak was commander of the Bosnian forces defending Sarajevo. General, what is your opinion of Radovan Karadzic?
Ono što ja mislim, to je bolestan čovjek, psihopata.
He's a sick psychopath. No sane man would order the killing of more than 100,000 people in Bosnia.
Now Karadzic has been given 40 years for his crimes. As a result, never again might just have a better chance. John Irvine, ITV News, Bosnia.
On our website, there's a blog from our correspondent Penny Marshall, who interviewed Karadzic during the Bosnian War and exposed the brutal concentration camps he set up. That is at itv.com/news.
2 senior Belgian government ministers offered their resignations today over blunders leading up to the Brussels attacks. The main one, revelations that one of the Brussels airport bombers had been deported from Turkey twice and was flagged as a suspected militant.
Well, meanwhile, there are reports tonight that the Paris attacker, Salah Abdeslam, may have been involved in planning the attacks in Brussels. But his lawyer denied he had any knowledge of it at a court appearance today. From Brussels, here's our security editor, Rohit Khatru.
He wasn't even in the courtroom, but the level of security indicates the interest in this. A secret hearing for the suspect who was first linked to the Paris attacks. A judge was told today he knows nothing about the atrocity in Brussels. But Salah Abdeslam is accused of linking both. His arrest last Friday might have triggered what happened on Tuesday. He's already told interrogators that he was meant to blow himself up at the Stade de France last year, but backed out. Now another change of mind over extradition to France.
Can you tell me why he wants to go to France, please?
Because I think this is the most important part of the file, and I think his explanation he has to give them there and not in Belgium.
Paris suspect Abdeslam was arrested last Friday in a shootout with Brussels police. He's thought to be linked to the airport bomb suspects. The man on the left is believed to be Najim Lashwawi, who's thought to have died in the attack. The identity of the man on the right, wearing a hat and white coat, is not known, but he's believed to be on the run. The middle suspect, Ibrahim al-Bakrawi, died in the airport explosion. His brother Khalid blew himself up in the metro attack. Reports say police are investigating whether a man caught on CCTV is a second suspect. His fate is unknown. They're men who were known to the authorities long before the attacks 2 days ago. The Belgian Prime Minister remembered their victims today.
Nous redoutions la tragédie terroriste.
What he didn't say was that 2 of his ministers have offered him their resignations, an admission that mistakes were made.
The Prime Minister and the inner cabinet requested clearly this morning that I stay on, given the current situation, that in a war situation you cannot leave the field.
The pain of the last few days might soon ease, but there's growing unease here, knowing that what seemed like such a shock might have in fact been so predictable.
Rohit, what more could you tell us about Abdesalam's involvement in this Brussels attack?
Well, tonight one highly respected Belgian broadcaster is reporting in the last hour or so that Abdesalam was planning a gun and bomb attack in Brussels, a follow-up to the atrocity in Paris, and the assumption being made was that those plots, that plan was linked to what happened here in Brussels last Tuesday. There is no official comment from the authorities here about those reports tonight. But what is clear is the emerging chaos right at the top of Belgian society. Ministers who were 5 days ago gleefully celebrating Abdesalam's arrest and capture alive, well, today they are part of a cabinet that is in crisis.
All right, Rohit, thank you very much indeed.
A doctor treating the wounded in Brussels has told ITV News he's not seen injuries like it since he was in Northern Ireland during the Troubles. At least 31 people are known to have died, but twice that number are severely injured. 6 Britons are now known to be among those hurt, while a 7th is missing. Emma Murphy reports from Brussels.
There's so little most people can do in Brussels to make things better, and so it is to the rituals of public grief that so many turn. Words of solidarity chalked into the ground, the air heavy with the scent of candles, and the flags of many nations in acknowledgement that Belgium is not in this alone. Many nations lost nationals here, and the outrage and grief is an international response. The King and Queen lead this country in its mourning. Visiting hospitals, they were shown some of the shrapnel which tore into those caught in the blasts. Solid, twisted and jagged, such pieces have done dreadful harm. Dr. Luc van Oberg treated many of the injured. He worked in Belfast during the Troubles. He told me it was the last time he'd seen such injuries on this scale.
There was a lot of burns too, a lot of patients who were burnt on the face or legs cuts and so on.
So far, the names of 3 of the 31 dead have been confirmed. Adelma Tapia Ruiz, a mother from Peru, was killed in the attacks at Brussels airport. 20-year-old Belgian student Leopold Heck died on the metro, as did Oliver Delspes, who was on his way to work that morning. For the families of the missing, the wait continues. Baggage handler Fabienne van Steenkies' family say they're trying to accept that she may be among the dead, whilst British IT programmer David Dixon remains unaccounted for. Some of those who survived have been speaking of their ordeal. Dominique de Mol survived the metro attacks. There was a huge flash, he said, a blast that threw people in every direction. Flames were going through the metro and the platform. The noise was absolutely deafening. The roads around the metro have now reopened. On the pavement, somebody has drawn a path of hearts in tribute to those who died here. Below, the forensic work goes on and will do for some time. Emma Murphy, ITV News, Brussels.
And later here on ITV, Julie Etchingham reports from Brussels for a special edition of Tonight, Europe Under Attack, and that is at 7:30.
Right, still to come on the ITV Evening News.
Beautiful play by Cruyff.
Tributes to Johan Cruyff, the legendary footballer and coach who has died aged 68.
Dancing with the president. Obama dances the tango in Argentina. Those stories and more after the break. Join us then.
Welcome back. The former England and Sunderland footballer Adam Johnson has been jailed for 6 years for engaging in sexual activity with a 15-year-old fan. It was also revealed today that he was arrested for possessing extreme pornography and that a psychiatrist apparently found he'd developed a sexual disorder due to his fame. Ben Chapman was in court.
For a man who knew these were his last moments of freedom, Adam Johnson was in a hurry to get into court this morning, if only to avoid the wall of cameras that have followed every step of his disgrace.
Now for Adam Johnson.
The former England star was told he'd abused the adulation and the trust of his fans when he groomed and then sexually assaulted a besotted young girl in the back of his car. Sentencing him to 6 years, the judge told him, "She had only just turned 15 when you began to groom her. You made a decision to engage in sexual activity with the girl even though you knew she was only 15, no doubt in the hope and expectation you'd get away with it."
Adam Johnson exploited a young, starstruck fan, actively grooming her over a number of months in a single-minded pursuit of his own sexual gratification. He gave no thought to this young girl's interests or welfare during that time or at any point since.
Here's Adam Johnson. He denied the charges for a year, continuing to play for Sunderland, which the court was told only added to his victim's psychological harm. Her statement to the court said, "I felt very intimidated by it all and I felt very lonely at times. I've entered many dark places over this 12-month period and at times just wanting to shut the whole world out, feeling unable to face anyone." Her mother said in her statement that her daughter had received thousands of abusive and threatening messages on social media in the year following Johnson's arrest. Some of it, the court was told, encouraged by people closest to him. On a page set up by his family, as it emerged he plans to appeal, his sister said, "I remain proud of my big brother and I am 100% behind him and I always will be." It can now be reported that police also found extreme pornographic images on Johnson's laptop, though no further action was taken. It completes the humiliation for a man who's now lost not just his career and reputation, but his liberty too. Ben Chapman, ITV News, Bradford Crown Court.
The funeral has taken place of 5 members of a family who died when their vehicle slid off a slipway and sank in the Irish Republic. Louise McGrotty, who lost her husband, 2 sons, mother and sister, was joined for the service in Londonderry by political leaders from both sides of the border.
Pope Francis has continued the Easter tradition of washing the feet of the poor, this year choosing 12 refugees for the rite, which he performed at an asylum centre north of Rome.
Here, the Queen continued her own tradition of handing out Maundy Thursday coins to pensioners. The recipients were chosen in recognition of their service to the community.
And New Zealanders have voted to keep their existing flag after a national referendum. 57% rejected proposals to replace it with a design incorporating a silver fern.
The legendary Dutch footballer and coach Johan Cruyff has died of cancer at the age of 68. Considered one of the game's greats, he was voted the best European player of 1973, 74 and 75, and then had a successful coaching career, particularly at Barcelona. Here's our sports correspondent, Ian Payne.
Beautiful play by Cruyff.
If you were to compile a list of the top 5 footballers of all time, Johan Cruyff's name would come up. A name immortalised by this. An outrageous piece of skill so unique they named it after him, the Cruyff turn. It had never been seen before, and for those who played against him, it was bewildering.
The Cruyff turn was something that everyone tried themselves. Even though you knew you were waiting for it to happen, he could still go past you because of the pace. And then when you thought he was going to do it, he didn't do it, and he went past you in a different way.
Cruyff won the European Cup 3 years in a row with the Dutch side Ajax in the early 70s. He led Holland to the 1974 World Cup final against West Germany, and one of his typically mesmeric dribbles led to the Dutch goal, even though it was the hosts who lifted the trophy. As a manager, he had great success too when, at Wembley, he won Barcelona's first ever European Cup in 1992. It was around this time, though, that Cruyff, a smoker throughout his playing days, was forced to give up following heart bypass surgery. Last October, he was diagnosed with lung cancer. A month later, though, he gave his fans hope when he talked about how much support he'd had.
Getting this energy to you, positive energy, I put it in your body. It looks like my body is double as strong as it was before.
In the end, though, it was the disease that won, to leave us all with some of football's greatest moments.
Johan Cruyff, who's died at the age of 68.
And finally, President Obama is known for his impassioned speeches, the occasional song, and now increasingly for his fancy footwork.
Yes, indeed, never a wallflower when there's a chance to dance. The President and his wife, Michelle, both had a stab at the tango during a state dinner in Argentina, giving marks out of 10. Here's Duncan Golestani.
He might have been hesitant, but in the birthplace of the tango, Barack Obama could hardly refuse. So the president stepped onto the dance floor with all the grace and agility you'd expect from a 6'1" commander-in-chief. With Michelle in the background, this was dancing diplomacy. The president is rarely shy busting a move, while winning an election provides the perfect excuse. Any occasion will do.
What's the secret to still dancing at 106?
With a 106-year-old in the White House or doing a native dance with children in Alaska, Obama has more rhythm than most politicians, and the crowds love it.
Baby, don't you want to go?
In fact, Barack Obama has become an all-round entertainer.
Same old place, sweet home Chicago.
Whether singing or dancing, whoever succeeds him will have a tough act to follow. Duncan Golestani, ITV News.
The man can move.
He certainly can.
And he can sing.
Nothing he can't do.
That's it for now. Tom Bradby's here at 10.
But from all the evening news team, have a lovely evening. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.